Hello and welcome to Still Digging, and I've lost my crew. Or they've lost me. Either way. Hello and welcome to our Spooktacular, where ghosts have taken over our internet, and, boo. So let me get this thing off, so you can actually hear me, and welcome. Let's see. Who do we have?
What?
All right.
That's your luck.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's what.
Oh, but my video's out? What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know why your video's out. There you are. You just showed up.
What? Okay.
And we should also have Amma, I hope.
Oh, Abba, that's so cute. Oh my god.
Is she there?
I don't know if she's there, but I just saw her picture, and it's cute as hell.
Oh,
I like it.
no, we lost you. Did the internet trolls get her? Give
Yeah,
her
I mean,
I
back.
don't know if we have any.
Give her back.
I'm not.
I'm back.
I'm not-
I've risen
Yay!
back.
Hooray.
Yay!
Yay.
So,
And there was
Welcome.
one.
I don't.
welcome to
Somebody
our
else
normal
check the stream. I don't know if we have any audio.
Oh, let me-
Hang on.
We should be doing audio. So,
It's not coming through online, but I've been having some issues with YouTube lately.
I heard audio, so.
Okay.
I
So
did
welcome to our normal
did it.
glitch-filled beginning to Still Digging, the first and
Super on.
only live bi-weekly archaeology panel discussion on YouTube on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Coast time that I know of. I have not
What
been
about that other one?
I have not been
What about
corrected
that other one? They're not real.
yet. So
They mean nothing.
and to more formally do it, greetings, ghosts and ghouls, and welcome to Still Digging, a show where a panel of archaeologists discuss the world of archaeology, presented by the ArchaeoRPG Collective. I'm your host, Bile, or should I say Bill, and this is the panel. We have the ghoulish, the zombie Amma, the ghoulish Sarah, and the pirate Tom. Today, we are getting creepy and demonic while we talk about the book Evil Archaeology. Then, we're going to go for your brains by talking about zombies and their archaeological connections. Let's dig in.
Dig.
Good.
Okay, I'm done. I mean, I spent like all week working on that bit, and that's about all I did.
And I'm out.
I know.
Dig, come on.
Those puns don't make themselves, all right?
Oh yeah, that was the other thing we're supposed to do is make puns.
Fun.
We
Oh,
pun in
okay.
honor
Oh, yeah,
of
so
our
for-
missing
For
compatriot.
those who were expecting to see Dr. Atlantis here with us, unfortunately he had other commitments and was unable to make it. He does send his condolences, and we wish to hopefully
Okay.
get him back here at a future episode. And in honor of him, we will try to throw in some puns unexpectedly and appropriately throughout the episode. The more unexpected and the more
I'm gonna be
inappropriate
very
the pun,
quiet.
the more will be honoring Dr. Atlantis. So also listen to Monster Talk, listen to and research of, and there's some sort of game. Which
Oh, yeah.
we'll plug later.
We'll pull that up later. Sorry, I'll do better, Blake.
We will plug it properly shortly. Alright.
Yeah, plug it properly at the break.
Yes. So we all read this book, Evil Archaeology. It's got a pretty cool cover. Shh, this is where you pretend. This is where you follow in with the group, and you're like, if the rest of the group does it, you just ride the coattails.
Yes, of course I did. Continue,
So
please.
this is a book written by Heather Lynn, comma PhD, um, and it on its cover. It appears to be about the investigations of demons, possessing sinister artifacts, and gruesome archaeological discoveries. Ooh. And, we had Halloween coming up, and there is plenty out there in the world of archaeology to talk about in terms of sort of the darker sides of religion and sort of the misinterpretations often of other cultures. A lot of times, what's seen as something that's spooky and evil and demonic is merely a colonial veneer put on to push away sort of an older belief when a new belief system is trying to push its way in. That sentence was
Yes.
more in depth and more sophisticated than pretty much anything you're going to find in this book.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
I have so
book
many notes.
it's like an encyclopedia of demons if you didn't bother to make it encyclopedia so it'd be easy to follow through and find, the names and so forth.
Yep.
I'm just trying to...
There's no way to describe. Like, okay, we do have to kind of couch things in, like, our terms. So, there's no way I can describe my full opinion of this book in anything resembling, like, polite terms. It's just. In my opinion, this book was not good. It was not well written. It was not researched. It's like, it seemed to me like it was somebody just did a quick Google search for, like, demons and then just kind of retold all the things they found and then didn't bother to cite any of it. Like, I think that's what irritates me more than anything. Nothing is cited hardly. And the things that are cited either go back to archaic sources or they're unreliable sources. And I could
Uh-oh.
Oh.
So we lost Sarah there, and yeah, I mean the sourcing of this stuff is not good. It's mostly a bunch of just so stories, things that have been researched, with very little like firsthand of anything. No discussion of primary sources, no firsthand research or anything on her part. It's merely a rehashing of, like I said, Wikipedia articles, 19th century demon encyclopedias, and so forth. But Sarah, I was covered for you while we're gone for a moment.
Okay.
Do you want to finish your thought?
I don't know why my camera's shutting off.
Oh no.
We got gremlins.
It's haunted.
This is our Spooktacular episode, if you were wondering. Well, heck, right before we went on the air, my internet went down. And I was scrambling to get it back up.
Hey. Maybe Dr. Lynn was really onto something here.
It could be.
Yeah.
Except...
So I will, just to be fair though, there are like 2 or 3 subjects where she does have real citations, specifically in chapter 10 when she's talking about the witch bottles and smoked cats. She does actually have a couple of up-to-date sources, not a ton, but they are things that I have also run into in just my research. So
like folk magic and the witch bottle stuff in the Middle Atlantic.
She actually seems to have actually some decent sources on like very specific things.
Right, so we're just dropping your audio right there, but it's very similar to what Tom and I were sort of talking before air when he mentioned that it's the kind of thing you would expect an undergrad to have. Tom, you're having some. I'm not getting any audio through. You could try again. Hey Tom, you there?
Hello?
I'm here.
I know, the one person who studied the book so much that she's letting everybody else talk about it.
Oh no.
I mean, to be fair, if we were kind of, if I were to pull from my deep reading of the source material,
Right.
which was actually the press kit that you provided.
Oh, I'm just losing everybody now. Internet, are you there still with me? I need to count on you, Internet. You're my only friends at this point. I'm not even looking at chat to make sure you're actually even still with me. Dear Internet, you're the only ones I have left.
Oh no, it's just Bill now.
Just me and the Internet. Just trying to get along. We have been spooked. We have been haunted. So, like I said, it's a bunch of sort of just so stories. Some of the ones I know, she talks about an event in 1949 with an alleged exorcism that takes place in Mount Rainier, Maryland. It was near a hometown where I grew up, so I know this story, and most other people know this story because it's the basis of the book and then eventually the movie, The Exorcist. But there's no new insight put on there. It's not drawn into sort of a longer narrative, and that's the biggest problem. If we're going to talk about problems with the sort of citing of different just so stories of different demons and so forth, I think the Mount Rainier Exorcist story is a great example. It's delivered as if you're reading it from Wikipedia, but it's not folded into a grander narrative. It doesn't advance the story in any way. Like if this is a story discussing archaeology and demons, everything should be building to a thesis, and that's not happening.
That was my main. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no archaeology in this book.
Well, I was going to say, even from the press kit, if you look at her quote unquote questions, they're not really, archaeology research questions.
Also, I went to go to get the download the press kit again, and her site is down.
It is.
Yeah, her site was down. I noticed that on Wiki. Reddit was talking about that.
Oh.
You guys can't hear me, can you?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what's going on.
Are we all back now?
I hope so. I have no idea what was going on with my camera, so if it cuts out again, I will just switch to my laptop.
Well, if you want to buy into the book's philosophy, we're all being haunted.
All right, so we need to get
talking shit about demons.
Does anybody got a goat hand?
I can't be haunted. I have spiritual guides that protect me from hauntings and demons because I don't believe in Christian gods. Therefore, demons for me are not bad.
Well, but demons aren't Christian gods. I mean, they're Sumerian. So see,
or just not Christian gods.
It wasn't the Christian ones. It was Bazulzul or I'm sorry, Megan. I always have to apologize when I mention when I mess up the Sumerian stuff. Kazuzu.
Demon of the West Wind.
Gesundheit.
Which we established. So I think, and Sarah, you checked in with Megan about this, but they would actually refer to them as demons, or whatever the equivalent was. Oh, we lost her again.
So to go back, one interesting section that I did find was sort of what to do if you're possessed. There's a very nice how-to section about if you suspect. There's a whole section talking about what to do to protect yourself. You've got to first identify the demon, then you got to get some defenses against that demon, and then if you think you're possessed, she is at least covering herself, if not offering good advice, by saying, first talk to a mental health professional.
But she tells you to talk to a mental health professional because she wants you to then have that mental health professional should recommend you to someone who can perform an exorcism.
Well, she also doesn't want to directly recommend an exorcism because they'll sue her.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so that one definitely threw me off because it was definitely like, oh, here's some good advice. Even mental health, if you're having issues, here's some good resources. But you could definitely get mental health help or seek a mental health professional because they are the best people to refer you to an exorcist.
So,
I don't know a ton of mental health professionals, but I don't believe I buy into that.
No, and it's
it's a CYA.
it's like you were saying with the Pazuzu thing, or going back to the Pazuzu thing. Yeah, Megan says that they would be called demon, but I think that's just because of the way the word is being translated. I don't think the intentions that we have attached to the word demon, modern intentions, I don't think that's the intention attached to the Sumerian word demon. I think it's literally just like, oh, this word translates closest to the modern word demon, whether it actually, like definition wise is exactly the same as another thing, because the Sumerian demons, Bill actually shared a really good thesis, doctoral thesis.
I didn't read that.
I did more research for this book than the book does, okay?
Doctoral thesis.
True.
But as that thing did point out, that the Sumerian gods and spirits were both good and evil. There weren't any that were like purely bad, and there weren't any that were purely good. They could switch back and forth. It's not until basically Christianity started meddling that things started getting hammered out into black and white categories, and that's where we get the idea of demon. And that's another thing that I really hated about this book, was that she just kind of co-opted anything that wasn't Christian and just assigned it to the demon category because it wasn't God.
And anthropology.
Right. It's a very
that one definitely got to me because she kept using the word demon and pagan, and there was a couple other ones that are blanket statements that anthropologists and social scientists don't really use anymore, because they're archaic and they don't really describe what it is that you're talking about. Because she has some linguistic information in there that again isn't cited regarding the Greek word daemon, D-A-E, with diphthong A-E-M-O-N, which was just basically a minor spirit. And I was actually listening to the Ologies podcast this morning. They had a demonology episode that just came out today, and that it was actually a person who is I can't remember the scientist, the researcher's name, but she is a professor of theology and actually has a PhD in theology and comparative religion, and was like discussing this, and like they're just minor spirits. It's not good or evil. It's just spirit.
So
that's an important anthropological methodology distinction to make.
But I think we should try to talk about like the actual archaeology. There's like one chapter which even begins to touch on archaeology in this book. But before we do that, I want to do a quote from the end of the book where she sort of gives her sort of summary here. So we can sort of talk about what she thinks evil archaeology is, and then go back and talk about the few. And I mean, there's like one chapter where she names some places, and only one of them does she even have an opinion on this stuff. But we'll get there. So the quote from this is sort of the last paragraph of the book here. To quote, "What is evil archaeology? People recognize evil. People recognize evil when they encounter it." I'm reading exactly. "Many of the sites and artifacts explored in this book may seem evil upon first impression, but when studying them in greater detail, you will find that some of this is not evil at all. In archaeology, one of the most important concepts is context, the position of an artifact or site in time and space. Context includes the analysis of how an archaeological find got there and what has happened to it since. It is very easy to become focused on sites and relics and to miss the broader relevance of the discovery with regards to human history and culture. Without context, sites like Stonehenge and Göbekli Tepe become a pile of rocks. Without context, Pazuzu figures and bearded satyrs start to look like cartoon characters. Perhaps what evil archaeologists can teach us about human history and culture is that evil we see in sinister relics is really just a reflection of the evil we fear in ourselves. There. I think that perfectly summarizes this book. I've said nothing.
Yeah.
I think the last sentence I think out of that was the only one that was of any coherence. Demons tend to represent the evil that we see in ourselves, as opposed to
it's faux profound, kind of like recent Neil deGrasse Tyson tweets.
Let it go.
But also accurate.
Let it go. No, but it's like no, it's too little, too late though.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And nothing in the preceding book support. I mean, that is my biggest problem with that last chapter of the book. She's introducing news. Okay, for the students out there, if you're writing, doing any sort of writing, your conclusion should not introduce any new arguments or any new situations to the thing. The conclusion is for you bring everything that you have previously done together and make it concise and make a concise statement. She is introducing philosophy. We're talking about Hegel and Plato in the last chapter. She's talking about context, where she's never talked about archaeological theory at all during this thing. It's all being thrown at the very end.
It should be your introduction. This would make an okay introduction.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like that her little, like, oh, this is all just in your mind. I feel like that was too little too late. Like, she'd already spent the entire book othering different cultures and basically pointing and laughing at different cultures. I mean, there's even a point in there where she's describing one of her horrific gore fests that she's passing off as human sacrifice. And she's like, could you imagine if we did that kind of thing today? And I'm just like, really?
There's some dismissive.
Who are you talking to? Yeah.
Do you remember which one that was?
No. I could look it up.
Wasn't the ethnic cleansing one, was it?
It wasn't the Fallen Star one. It was I think it was right when she very first started talking about all of the crazy human sacrifice. Because she was talking about, she's like, could you imagine if, like, I don't know, who's the head honcho of Apple? He did die.
Not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs?
Yeah, no, she was like, can you imagine if Steve Jobs died?
It was Amazon. It was Jeff Bezos and, killing all the work staff of Amazon.
Yeah. Sorry, Amazon peeps.
He's trying.
Well.
I mean, anyway. No, but all right, so just looking at the archaeological finds chapter, she uses a lot of judgmental language in just describing things. So like the Alkenenge slaughter, she uses wild barbarians, Germanic barbarians, tribal brutality. Like it's a lot of just, and also no citations.
Right.
And it's just like, it's things that archaeologists don't do, which brings me to her credentials. So she does have a degree in archaeology. Hold on.
She has an associate's degree in archaeology.
Yeah, associate's degree in archaeology. She has an MA in history, so she should know how to write and have and use citations correctly.
She supposedly has a doctorate in education too. I would assume that you would learn how to cite when you did that.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know what she was doing with that. But she talks about her history thesis, class inequality, consumer culture, propaganda, and public education in early modern Europe, which is actually sounds interesting, but she doesn't use apparently any of those skills that she learned in writing that thesis.
Partially, to be fair, this is from a smaller publisher, so there probably wasn't a good editing staff.
That's not an excuse. I'm sorry.
I was about to step to the next point, but even with that, she's writing for a general audience, so I wasn't expecting heavy jargon, and I would be disappointed if it was heavy jargon, because we shouldn't be using heavy jargon in a general audience thing. But it's too pithy. The way the language is for the general audience, it's like someone who doesn't know how to talk to a general audience, and is kind of like walks up to a group of kids going, "Hey, fellow kids, how are you guys doing today? Is everything looking cool in the hood?" Really out of place. That's like you have no business being there. See, I'm doing all the silly stuff today because I'm wearing a mask, so no one will know who I am.
It's just, oh god, I completely lost my train of thought. But yes, it's like she's that person that, like, I took a class in college one time, now I'm an expert, and it's like,
that and the certificates that she lists in her qualifications in her about the author. I'm a little like, I went and tried to check them out, and and to be fair, I didn't look super hard, but I could not find certificate programs from those universities in those subjects that she claims to have them from.
And so
I don't know. I could be wrong, but I could not find any evidence of those certificate programs.
Right. And to be fair, we're doing sort of a lot of generalization because we're sort of generalizing her book. But let me go specifically there.
Sure.
So in chapter 10, which is the only chapter which talks about any archaeological finds, she talks about this Neolithic massacre. That's her phrasing of it. It's a mass burial bone pit found in southwest Germany near Herexhelm. Sorry to all the German watchers out there and listeners, speakers out there. And this is the only place in the book, in the entire book, where I see her speaking in the first person, any sort of analysis of this. Quote, "I believe that some religious elements drove these people to undertake this arduous walking journey of many hundreds of miles to this tiny hamlet as part of some type of ritualistic pilgrimage." No citations. She mentions that some of my colleagues have proposed that victims were not eaten. So they found a bunch of human remains with signs on there that the bones had been stripped and butchered. With stone tools, they leave distinctive marks on bones, so that when you're looking at them afterwards, it's different than if they were being eaten by an animal, or if they were just left exposed, or if they were just buried in the ground. Cutting something with a tool leaves distinctive marks, and these marks were being found on these remains, human remains there. So they appeared to have been butchered in some way, shape, or form. So go back. Some of my colleagues have proposed that the victims were not eaten after all, but were simply stripped of their flesh as part of ritual, a vicious ritual. But I see the evidence differently. That idea seems just as preposterous as my hypothesis, which considers that the human bones bore the same marks as those found on butchered livestock. The thing is, as I mentioned, I did more research for this than appears in the entire book. And I found at least two journal articles. I've at least found two journal articles, academically peer-reviewed journal articles about this particular site, her Exhelm site in Germany. And those sites discuss cannibalism as a definite possibility. It's not a controversy. She isn't making a statement that isn't already being discussed by the scholars who are actually studying this site. So she's basically, she's a straw man. She set up a straw man of like unreasonable archaeologists who won't listen to reason that this was a cannibal site. And here I am, I say this is. No one's arguing. It's an argument without an argument. There's nobody there arguing with her. Yep. Plus, I also couldn't find anything online of any of her participation in this. I mean, that's not to say that she didn't participate in this. I just couldn't find anything thing on there. And she doesn't, unfortunately, she doesn't provide any evidence either with any citations during this section that would have helped with this. I would have liked to seen, if she was really personally involved with it, some of her writing and some of her report writing on this. I mean, I didn't work that site. I haven't excavated a Neolithic site in Germany, so I'm no expert and can tell it one way or the other. But I would like to see the evidence and read it and then look at it. And
but you did actually find...
That's just not there.
You did find more citable works than she cited in her text.
Yeah, exactly.
And eventually we'll get those in the show notes so that you can also do your own homework on this. We would definitely, I think our consensus is we are not, this is a, not, for the Still Digging Book Club, this would be a thumbs down, trowel down, I don't know, we don't have a rating system
Trowel down, yeah.
Trowels
Or
down.
trowels down.
Damn it. Oh.
So I don't know how much field work she's done, because she made a joke about dirt boogers, and she was talking about it like it was not a real thing. And that one really just tanked her credibility.
There's a really interesting thing about the dirt boogers comment is she's directly quoting from a book. Yeah, that one is actually cited.
For that one.
Yeah, she's got a cite for that, and the cite's from Ken Fader's book that he co-wrote with another archaeologist, and I think it's called like Dangerous Ways to Die in Archaeology or something like that. And it's just, don't read that book if you're like a first-year CRM person, because you will never go back out in the field ever again. What?
I have to think that Ken Fader quote is there deliberately as sort of a shot.
Yes.
Because Ken Fader, for those who don't know, is pretty much one of the more prominent, if not, he's on that upper tier of the pseudo-archaeology debunkers out there. He literally has written the book, and then another book.
Yeah.
And then the other book about this entire field of debunking this.
He's got 3 books out there about this kind of stuff. Yeah.
So he is one of the absolute best sources out there.
And he is constantly going after people on, on television and on the radio, and he's always being interviewed. Like, he's very well known, not just among archaeologists, but around pseudo-archaeology circles as well. And I have 2 opinions. I think the way she used that quote was to make it sound like Ken was agreeing with her on her, because she was using that around the curse of King Tut's curse. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like she was using that to make it sound like Ken was backing up the fact that the King's Tut curse was real, because that's how she's pushing it in the book. And then I think the other end of that is, I think she really was trying to like name and shame him. And being like, look, this guy who debunks all this stuff, he's agreeing with us right now. And it's like, what's really, really ironic about that is Ken has gone on more than one rant on my show and just in general about how the King Tut's curse is not real. So like, this is a pet peeve of his, is this King Tut's curse. And so it's just kind of like doubly ironic that she quoted him at the point where she quoted him. And granted, she's talking about dirt boogers, but the dirt boogers were connected to something was in the air in the King Tut's tomb, and that's what made all the archaeologists who opened the tomb sick, and that's why they all died.
Okay, and then lastly, because we're gonna go over an hour today. Okay, just letting you guys know.
I mean, we can jump to zombies at any point.
No, but there's one more, at least one more thing on my little list about this book to go in there. The only sort of named people that are in this book that she goes to for, there's out of place interviews, at least twice in this book.
Yes.
And they're both with people who are cohorts of hers who have run the Coast to Coast AAM Ancient Alien circuit with her. I think we buried the lead on this thing on there. She's a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM. The most prominent, I believe, audio Woo Factory I guess now on the internet. I don't think it's on radio anymore. It might be. And of course, she's a consultant has been a consultant at times for Ancient Aliens, the television series, which is slowly but maybe quickly destroying Sarah's brain at this moment.
I'm comparing the first season to the most recent season, so I'm watching like episode 1 of season 1, and then I'm watching episode 1 of season 14, and I'm just trying to see how things have evolved over 14 years of being on the air, and there's just things that, like for the most part, I'm just kind of like, okay, they're using flashy music, you know, they've upgraded their graphics, their hosts aren't so spastic about everything. They're not so boring about everything. And I'm like, no, I can't take the topic anymore. God damn it, Akhenaten is not an alien.
Yeah, what?
But did you know that some ancient aliens theorists think?
The last one that I just finished watching, where I was like, you know, I really have to quit watching for a minute. They were talking about the Badlands Guardian, which is not real, but it's this they're calling it a geoglyph, but what it is if you zoom out on the map of the earth far enough, you can see the shape, and it kind of looks like the outline of a Native American wearing a headdress. So they gave it to a person who is like a 3D artist or something. Yes. And the 3D artist took the image of the Badlands Guardian, did some kind of like 3D overlay to, like, if you were pressing clay into it, because of course the actual image is depressed in the earth. It's not carved. It's not a carved relief. It's carved into the earth. And so she basically pressed digital clay into it, and then just started stretching it in rando directions. And then she managed to get this beautifully sculpted, weird-looking, elongated skull man out of it. And as soon as she did that, Tsoukalos was like, "Oh my God, it looks just like Akhenaten." And so now that they're connecting that, like, the Badlands Guardian isn't actually a Native American wearing a headdress. It's an image of Akhenaten that has made its way all the way from Egypt to Canada, and that's the alien connection between.
No. It's Akhenaten is Jesus Templar. What was the book you read?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Scott Walter's book, From Akhenaten to the Templars.
I mean, that's what I mean. I want to see the fight.
X.
We need to have that fight. I want to see a fist fight between, you know, Hare and Scott on TV, because I don't think they like each other.
Scott's already folded on the alien thing. Remember, you watched that episode,
I know,
and
but
there's
I
no.
think he's got beef with ancient aliens themselves, probably because he's not. They're making more money than he is. I'm sure as soon as he got a check, he'd probably be happy.
Scott Walter. Anyway.
Right.
We'll save him for a different day.
There's something, right?
Do what?
Zombie?
Zombies? Yeah, let's do zombies.
Well, no.
Hold on.
So a quick. So we talked about Scott Walter's book a few times, but since now we have a rating system, let me give it the proper rating.
Oh, we have a rating system. Oh yeah, the
Trial
trials.
down. Trial down.
Trial down. Yeah, so at least 3 trials down.
Yeah, I only have 1 trial right now, so it's one.
I haven't read.
You read another one.
Oh, we should
I've read
trials with us and be like.
I haven't finished that one yet.
But yeah, I mean, there's nothing. It's not even like, you know, like you go to a movie, and it's a bad movie, but it's so.
But at least it's entertaining.
But it's so goofy bad that you have a good time with it. This book's not even that. This is like bad and boring, which is the 2 worst things you could do with a movie or any kind of media. If you're going to be bad, be batshit, all right? Offer insane theories. Talk about your personal experience with aliens and how you punched a demon in the face or something.
She does have a first-person.
Yeah.
First-person exorcism.
I'm a sheltered. I'm a sheltered person who's not familiar with the American South, and I go into a rural area where I see what sort of a Pentecostal or Baptist ceremony taking place, and I'm like all of a sudden, ooh, that is another insulting area, just completely dismissive. And I wish I had taken my at the time I didn't have my anthropological skills to ask the right questions.
I love that episode because he's like so determined not to eat the food.
Oh no, I'm talking about a
Right.
book where she goes to the exorcism.
Oh, I might have skipped that. I don't know. I got to the point where I started skipping shit.
Yeah, I skipped the chapter that was just a bunch of ghost stories.
Oh yeah, I
I
skipped
just
that
looked
one.
through
And
it
I
to see if
skipped
there was
all
any citations, and there weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad somebody read it.
Somebody did the
I
homework.
read the exorcism one, and I read the first like page or so of the exorcist interview, and it was just so bad. He's an exorcist / life coach / trainer.
Oh yeah, that guy. Okay, I do remember talking to him. Yeah, no.
What?
Well, it's not as bad
Well,
as
you gotta
I
be
have
buff
the
to take
one.
the demons on, man.
I have one South Asian friend, so please tell me everything you know about the religions of the subcontinent and the culture.
Oh yeah, I skipped
I
that
mean,
one.
to be fair, I do bug the shit out of Araya when I'm like, "Ooh, tell me about the Philippines," and like she's my only touchstone there.
Yes,
So,
but if you're writing a book,
But
I would
I don't-
hope you would do a little more research after
Right.
that.
Mhm.
right. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to write a book about the Philippines, I would at least do more than a Google search about the Philippines and just interview one person. You know, as much as I adore her.
And a lot of these things are just they're not even like presented as scary. They're like there's an entire section talking about ossuaries and crypts of bones, and it's more along the lines of like, can you believe it? There are these places where they're just bones everywhere. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, she does that a
There's-
lot though. She's like, "Oh my god, these people are so weird. What do you think? I think they're weird." And it's
And
just like,
there's
stop.
There's no premise at all about they're like evil. There's no like demonic element to them or a haunting that you
No,
could.
she's just othering people.
It's more like, hey, this is weird. I just wanted to point it out to you. It's kind of a little morbid if you had to ask me. But yeah, that was just it's just so. This was a very disappointing
Yeah,
book.
she
I was
doesn't-
hoping for spooky stuff that we could really, I mean, we spent all this time
Actually,
getting
talk
elaborately dressed up for the occasion.
Just
talk
for the
about
Steve.
actual archaeology. Although in the zombies information that we have, there is no archaeology.
That's true. We do have some good zombie stuff, so.
So speaking of which, should we let our ghoul in charge, the one who's been very quiet recently?
What
Yeah,
the adult in the
'cause-
room call it?
She's probably gnawing
Mama
some brains
went
right now.
nuts. She was
You
like,
there?
"Zombies, I got this." And like in 30 minutes, she had like a 4-page report written. And I was just like, "All right, you've been waiting for this moment, haven't you?" Mama.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I thought she was back.
Of course not.
She's off eating brains right now. She's getting really into the research. You know, participant observation is the
I mean-
hallmark of good anthropology. So,
Ugh. But that's how you get like brain issues.
all right,
Yeah.
cultural anthropologists are a different beast. You know, they put us archaeologists to shame in terms of the crazy crap they're willing to do.
Now I'm being cursed by bad internet.
We thought you were out eating
It
brains or
wouldn't
something.
be. No, it wouldn't be a still digging episode if we weren't having me cut in and out periodically. Working on that though. So thank you for the great transition. I kind of wanted to tackle the idea of archaeology of a zombie apocalypse. Zombies are kind of a hot commodity right now in popular culture. It's waning a little bit, but what I just saw Netflix put up a show.
Another one?
Yeah, I forget what it's called, but it actually looks really interesting. It's about like all the adults become zombies and cliques of teens form these like post-apocalyptic like road warrior-esque groups based on their like social.
Oh, is that like it's an Australian show or something? Or am I thinking of something else? It's
It
like
didn't,
the
not from the preview. No,
it's Daybreak.
actually, I think that sounds correct, but maybe they just redid it as Hollywood is wont to do. But
No, I
there's
think this is something else because the other one is like they're like a bunch of street gangs,
oh,
which it keeps popping up on one of my YouTube. But watch it.
I don't know.
There's
It sounds
stuff.
familiar. Huh. I'll have to look
Anyway.
into it. Like I said, I caught it while I've been binging the Dark Crystal miniseries, so I haven't given it much my attention, but I have been giving zombies my attention.
Yeah.
My big transition was the fact liches and ghouls and one of the things that came up with undead scheme, and do we talk about all of them or do we just focus on zombies? So I kind of wanted to actually start by opening up with a discussion to this section. Discuss amongst yourselves.
So so undead that we've been hold on. So for undead that we've encountered in the campaign, is that what you're talking about? Versus...
Yeah. Well, in general, because we were also talking about, like, if you look at the kind of quote unquote history of writing on zombies, some people will include, Frankenstein and some of the literature that's been influenced by that as well too. So when we talk about liches and ghouls, can we also talk about zombies? What do we unfold into this conversation?
Well, I think the zombies are kind of an umbrella term for the undead in general.
Yeah.
So you have your normal brain-eating rigor mortis zombies in popular culture, and then you have ghouls, which I think of as fast zombies. So like something you would see in like 28 Days Later is what I think of.
Oh, okay.
I associate with what you would call a ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
And then which we fought in our last episode of Rituals and Rolls. And then the liches would be like your brain zombies, like
Sentient.
I think what is it? Return of the Living Dead has like one or two of them are smart, right? Anybody remember that? Watch that movie.
It's been a while with that one.
All I remember is the part where they send the ambulance and the guy one of the zombies calls on the radio to send more snacks. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Sarah? Because you were throwing out a lot of questions there too.
I'm not a huge zombie fan in general, so I don't know like a lot of zombie lore or anything like that. But it seems to me that zombies, the term, and I think you guys have already touched on this, that the term zombie just kind of encapsulates a lot of things. Like it can be, it can be The Walking Dead. I think at one point we were like, is Frankenstein's monster a zombie? Mm-hmm. And apparently that's a discussion actually, because somebody was another of these theses that people found and put up last night. They were talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is an example of a zombie because it was a commentary on the fears of the time, and that zombies are usually, like, the concept of a zombie is really just the putting into words the superstition or social fears of an era, like ghouls eating the dead back in medieval or Dark Ages times, which I know neither of those are good terms. And then, the Frankenstein's monster was about man playing God and creating life, and electricity had just started to become a thing. And so, of course, you use electricity to bring the dead back. Vampires can also fall into that category. I mean, they are still reanimated dead, technically. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of an opinion when it comes to zombies. I'm sorry.
No, but I think it's good to kind of put it out there because it's something that I didn't think about prior to putting this podcast together or the content together, because I wanted to kind of unfold all of them. But if you look at just the etymology of zombie, we're talking specifically about Haitian. French and Haitian folklore. So there is it is a term that exists, within a cultural context, like an actual cultural context, but there is that wider concept of the undead, which, could potentially be what we're really talking about when we talk about zombies, because the term's been appropriated, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and like Fear the Walking Dead and Walking Dead. I mean, you're not necessarily talking about zombies. I mean, even though the monster are zombies, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, we have other ways of saying the animated dead, reanimated dead. We don't really need the word zombie, but it's just become so ingrained. It's like Kleenex. Do you need to blow your nose? Yeah, I need a Kleenex,
Right. So so kind of just to touch back at Frankenstein for a second. It was written right in the middle of the Enlightenment period, I believe, or right after. And it was kind of this fear of science. So kind of touching on that kind of pop culture themes of the day was kind of just this concept of science going against the natural world is what kind of is one of the main themes of the story. And that's also the same time where you get people like resurrectionists, so people who would they would go and dig up the dead to sell to medical colleges.
Oh, yes.
So they would have cadavers for anatomy classes, and that became a whole concept of itself. So you end up with burials that have cages over top of them, so they're harder to dig into and have your corpse stolen. And people who were disadvantaged also and marginalized were also particularly susceptible to this. So there is a I don't want to, but yeah. So there was an issue with VCU in the early modern period, I want to say early 1900s, exhuming the bodies of recently dead African Americans and using those for their anatomy classes,
And that's a good
without the
good
permission of the family.
And that's a good spin on sort of like there's basically two eras of zombies in popular culture. There's sort of the pre and post Romero periods. George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. Before then, the presentation of zombies in popular culture is very steeped in colonialist ideas. It is either directly Haitian, African, it is black. Even if it's something like the movie White Zombie with Bela Lugosi, it's performed by whites, but they are performing blackness by being zombies in that movie. So there's a racial and colonial aspect very steeped in the term zombies in sort of the pre-Romero era. In the post-Romero era, zombies become masses. They're always a mass. It's always a horde. It's never a one-off type of thing. You don't see zombie movies post-Romero typically with one or two zombies. It's always a horde because at that point then they are representing some mass of other, whether it's a mass of consumerism like Dawn of the Dead or just otherness in general in some of the other movies. It's meant to be a mass with that. I mean, the World War Z is the ultimate in terms of one way you could look at it would be a discussion of sort of global migration in a climate crisis era, where you have sort of these migrants moving, these hordes moving to places where the resources aren't there, so they are defending it and they're destroying it and they're building walls and they're shooting them down. I mean, there's the scene in the book in Jerusalem, where they're at the wall and they're shooting them physically down. You have the big climactic scene, the turning point in the book. Spoilers for those who haven't read it. In the Khyber Pass, where the humans finally figure out a way of stopping the zombies, stopping these hordes from overwhelming them. And that's the fear of zombies in sort of the post-Romero era, is this horde which is going to overwhelm you, whatever you are, and your culture and your civilization is that fear of being overwhelmed by these others. And those others change over time. Like I said, one of them is purely consumers for Dawn of the Dead. George Romero is actually pretty good at using his for actual interesting and good social commentary with his use of zombies. So that's sort of, as opposed to like ghouls, I think of like Lovecraftian creatures in sort of Gothic era type stuff, and leeches. They lend themselves more to a sort of an older time. With sort of like when we were to our first topic with evil archaeology, with sort of these older ideas of demons and monsters and creatures, which basically meant those things which were out of the prescribed religion, either folk tales or folk stories or other religions that are outside, where, and this is strictly a Western idea, the movement of Christianity to sort of overcome all those things in place. So that's sort of my 2 cents on the whole zombie thing.
Which and not even metaphorically. It does at certain points it represents disease. It represents communism and during the Cold War, or in post World War II. And I mean even to the point, and you put a link in this. The CDC has a zombie plague preparedness.
Yes.
Thing.
Yeah. They made a zombie preparedness thing.
Right, and that was just meant to be kind of just like, okay, there's a massive outbreak with aggressive vectors, not literally zombies.
Right.
But
everybody paid attention because it said zombies, so...
Right. Which is excellent marketing.
Exactly.
And to play with the thought of experiment of like, what would be post-apocalyptic archaeology look like, you would have to first rationalize that there would be a post-zombie world. Because most of these stories, that's my always problem with these stories, which is why I don't really like reading them that much, because they can't end.
Yeah, me too.
They always, the best of this type of genre, and it's not quite zombies, they're called vampires in it, but it might as well be I Am Legend, Richard Matheson's book.
Yeah.
Where, at least it ends with a good ending. I'm talking about the book, not the movie. Where it turns into the monster is the last remaining human, and these creatures are the next...
Spoilers.
Spoilers for a 60-year-old book.
Yeah. Sorry about you.
I think it was 1950 something the book came out.
Yeah.
And these creatures
represent
a new humanity.
I mean, to be fair, if you've read World War Z, which I thought for the most part was interesting, except for, of course, as somebody who's lived and worked in Japan, I wasn't that excited about, his take on it. It actually ends kind of at a bit of a stalemate where overwhelmingly the zombies have defeated. They're still out there, and humans have actually come up with interesting survival tactics like building houses on stilts so that zombies couldn't actually access them, if I remember correcely. It's been a while since I've read the book. Pretty much. I mean, didn't they do that in The Walking Dead too? I think there was one guy who had an ingenious plot where he put a bird in a cage and surrounded the cage by like sharpened objects, and basically the zombies, in trying to get the living creature, would impale themselves on it. So there are methods, that I think are really, again, part of that materiality of a potential zombie apocalypse.
Well, I mean, there's one thing that can be said about the human race, and that is we adapt very well to everything. Whether we do it well or not is another story, but we've managed to survive in some form or fashion. So we either become the monsters in I Am Legend, or we learn how to keep the monsters at bay, like Walking Dead and all that.
No,
So-
for sure. Oh, go ahead.
All right, you go ahead.
And I was just going to say the one thing that I want to point out on what Bill was talking about that I found during my research, which I thought was really, really awesome, was I discovered an activity for archaeology students, which this one educator put together, and I can link in the chat, where she literally posed the question to her students: what were the immediate changes in material culture and social organization in the days following the onset of a zombie outbreak on campus? So she was again using this kind of as a hypothetical situation, and I guess talking about what either would be disaster and or some kind of warfare archaeology considerations, which I think is, again, going back to the CDC, a really fun way of theorizing, how can we use these literary examples to learn more about the disciplines that we use in real life.
And I think there's
Yeah.
real benefit
think-
there. I mean, like, what is the archaeology of a pandemic? We have pandemics. Is there material culture that would document those things? What is the archaeology of mass migration, when large groups of people suddenly, for whatever reason, move from one place to another? What does that look like? So I think there's actual real implications of this hypothetical of like zombie apocalypse archaeology.
Yeah, but we can see that. We've done that archaeology. That exists.
But
Right,
it's still
and-
fun.
Oh, no,
Right,
no.
so-
I'm just saying, like,
Well,
putting
no,
it
the
So
basic-
let's look at what some analogs would be then. So we would have disaster archaeology. So you end up with things where people are abandoning, like you would have under the High Street in Edinburgh, where there are like neighborhoods that were just buried after the plague. They were just completely abandoned, and they built over top of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, that if the corpses are then animating, I suppose you wouldn't have a whole lot of burials or human remains to get to find. But you would have these periods of just abandonment where people are just dropping things that are not, that are not seen as useful at the time, and potentially cumbersome, and then you would like you were saying with the campus thing, turning towards warfare. So you would see probably more pragmatic objects being used, and maybe improvised weapons and things like that. But you would also still have personal items that people have sentimental value for staying with them. So you would find potentially less of those, or caches of them, or something like that.
So I think the bigger problem is in a post-apocalyptic, post-zombie apocalypse world, you would most likely have the fall of capitalism as we know it. And in a post-capital, I've been reading Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism to try to keep my brain in place after reading The Evil Archaeology. And so in that world, in this post-capitalist world, what is archaeology? Meaning, like, thinking like, and there's been some online Twitter discussion about this as well, is like, what is post-capitalistic archaeology look like when currently there are financial motives for archaeology, either the academy, which is there to produce new workers, or CRM, which is a profit endeavor and about regulations. You've taken away those two incentives. Who's doing this archaeology? Who are they doing it for? And those are harder questions,
we
because
know
I
what
don't
that
think we do a
looks like,
good
too.
job. I don't think we do a good job of thinking about what that post world looks like. Period.
No, I think we can answer that question though, because when archaeology first started to come about as an anything, it wasn't being done for profit. It was being done by the rich who had the abilities to pay and go, and it was being done for curiosity's sake.
So it'd go back to the Cabinet of Curiosity era.
Yeah, so basically we would go back to, I think that wouldn't be an unfair analysis,
No,
is to say that we would go
I
back
could see
to
that definitely as a potential. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also argue that it's being done as a prestige like event, though, because the
But I
whole
don't
grain
know why-
before thing was like an initiation almost.
I mean, it would still be a prestige thing, though. Why else would you do it? You're either going to do it for money, for profit, for money, or for glory, or out of curiosity. I mean, what other reason would you do archaeology for?
Well, I mean, and also, I mean, a lot of the early archaeology was trying to tie the modern empires to classical empires. So a lot of the English were coming into Greece, and like that's how you get things like the Elgin marbles, where they're trying to connect back to previous.
So we're going to leave you on this uplifting note that rich people and racists would be the only ones left who would care about archaeology in a post-apocalyptic world.
Womp womp.
Can I ask one final question of all you guys?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yes.
Excellent, teacher. What is your favorite zombie and or TV show?
Hands down, the only zombie movie I've ever watched and actually enjoyed. So,
Excellent choice.
That's my choice because
Though
it's just
I-
one of the few with actual humanity in there. It's one of the one of the few
Yeah.
ones where you actually see someone who sees a zombie and sees that as a former person rather than. I also spent my research playing a little bit of Dead Rising 4, and you just run. It's one of those games you just run around and just slaughter zombies by the hundreds because they're just fodder at that point. They're things. So Shaun of the Dead is actually cool because he actually sees that zombie as a person. Because that's his friend.
yeah, he sees it as his best bud.
It's still his best bud.
Yeah. And his mom, God, I hate that. That's the one scene in that movie I can't take. Where he has to shoot his mom, and I'm just like, oh, but she's
That was
actually
really
a nice
upsetting.
person.
That one was really upsetting. I'm trying to think of everything that I've seen.
I did put you guys on the spot. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, while he's thinking, I want to know why you don't like the Santa Clara diet.
I just thought the writing was poor and the acting was mediocre. I literally could not get through the first episode. It was so cringy.
Oh, the cringy was like I think what made it though, for me.
And I normally like the main actress. Why can't I remember her name now off the top of my head? Firestarter, E.T.
Drew Barrymore.
Yes.
Well, I was playing her husband because I don't usually like him at all, and I loved him in this.
I don't know what to say. I just did not get into it, and I rarely walk away from things. This couldn't even get through one episode of.
You're funny. You're just like, no, I'm done.
So Tom, did you have one?
I have standards.
I don't. I find them interesting, but I don't actually like zombie movies that much.
That's why we're the experts on these topics.
I did enjoy Shaun of the Dead. iZombie was also an interesting take on it. So they're kind of just they're completely intelligent, but they require brains to continue functioning as humans. Which turns into a DSI thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was cute. It just like they started getting too drama-y for me. And she started doing stupid stereotypical girl shit, and I was just like, yeah, no.
I don't know. That last season went off the deep end really quickly.
I've only seen the first season, and it irritated the crap out of me at the end. I was just like, no, I'm done.
Serpent in the Rainbow was actually really interesting.
I have seen that.
Which was it was interesting. So it started Bill Pullman as basically the author of the book Serpent in the Rainbow, going to investigate this kind of modern day zombie that kind of snapped out of it at some point. And basically he goes through the zombie ritual, which involves being poisoned and buried and dug up and brainwashed and drugged with psychoactive stuff, and which is all a lot of it is hypothetical, but some like the tetrodotoxin and the poisoning and burial and then digging the person up again is a real thing that happened. And there is a book by Zora Neale Hurston, Tell My Horse, that is about her time there, and is an actual anthropological book. It is written in 1938, so there is a little bit of colonialism in there, but it has really interesting really interesting descriptions of some of the rituals around voodoo and zombies that are, if you're interested in it, it's a good read. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up now. A little bit of housekeeping. We're actually going to shut this stream down for a moment, reset ourselves, and then we'll be back live on the channel for the Rituals and Rolls recaps for those who want to watch us on that. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us at ArcheoRPG on Facebook and Instagram when it's working, and Twitter. Our Instagram was down for part of the day. Our email address is archeorpg@gmail.com. If you wish to support our show, you can become a patron over at www.patreon.com/archeorpg. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Help spread the word of ArcheoRPG, of Still Digging, and Rituals and Rolls. And once
Send
again...
us questions.
You have a question?
No, send us questions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Send us questions.
I was trying to do the catchphrase.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Once again, thank you, and keep digging. Bye.
Catchphrases.